Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Rap Thought Podcast, brought to you by Matthew and Brandon.
So we're our own sponsors now, huh?
Well, we're sponsored by Wine Gorilla.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
we are sponsored by Wine Gorilla, and I think that's about
So does that mean we're gonna pay ourselves? Should we throw $10 an episode at ourselves?
Do you know the owner?
Yeah.
Ask him.
All right.
So
I'll
ask
do
him.
that.
Ask him. But yeah, so this week we will be taking a look at Jurassic 5 Quality Control, dropped in 1999 or 2000. 2000. My mistake.
Yeah. Recorded in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
So
probably in 1998 and whatever else.
yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to doing this one. I personally I put down quite a bit of stuff for it.
Yeah, it's a dope album. I love Jurassic 5. I don't know about you, but I was introduced to Jurassic 5 pretty early on. I think I was in middle school, actually.
Mm-hmm. Middle school.
Yeah, probably 6th, 7th grade.
Okay.
Kind of in a weird way. I found out about Jurassic 5 through Dreamcast, the console. So,
what?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, I used to get Dreamcast magazine, and with the magazine, they'll give you a demo disc, and it would be full of demos for games, but then it would also have other stuff on it, like music videos or just little promos or things like that. And there's a music video for one of the songs on this album. I think it was Great Expectations. I'd have to look back, but yeah, it's a funny way of discovering a hip hop group through video games. And the video game Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX, it was on PlayStation 1, and they had the song Great Expectations on that game. And I remember playing that game for hours and loving that song every time it came on, on the radio whenever when you're playing the game. It's made by the same people who made Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Mm-hmm. So obviously the soundtrack on those games are, renowned, and they make a big impact on the game because you hear the song so much. So yeah, that's my introduction to Jurassic 5, which is kind of a different introduction to music, I guess.
You and I were just talking about different soundtracks, and when you were bringing this up and how you first heard it, I was like, man, because everyone, whether you know it or not, you've probably heard of Jurassic 5 with Golden. Mm-hmm. Everyone's heard that song. Mm-hmm. And so that's my first intro to them. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember where I first heard it. And I was like, getting back into our topic about soundtracks, NBA Street Volume 2.
Oh, yeah.
Is an amazing game with a great soundtrack.
Oh, man. That's a classic game and a classic soundtrack.
Yeah. Classic game.
Every time you boot it up and you hear Troy.
Yes. Amazing. Amazing.
It gets you in the mood to play some basketball.
Oh, hell yeah. And so I was like, man, did I hear that song on there? But I don't think I did. Yeah. And so for me with J5, honestly, I think of high school, and when you get into that phase of hey, I want to start venturing into more underground music, what is something I can listen to? Yeah. If people are going to name 5 different artists, J5 is going to be in that
100%.
discussion.
J5 is a great segue into underground hip hop. But what's funny is they're not underground. They're on Interscope, or they put these albums out under Interscope, which is a major label that Eminem is on, and Dr. Dre and other big artists. But it seems like Interscope is okay, we need to capture the independent underground hip hop scene. So they signed Jurassic 5. Because back then, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, underground hip hop started becoming big, and there's a lot of fans liked underground hip hop, especially from Hieroglyphics. They were the first, one of the first independent labels and groups to come out and do everything on their own. And you have LP and his group coming out of New York that were super independent. You have Def Jux with Aesop Rock. And
Aesop Rock is absolutely in that conversation. I feel like Diggable Planets is in there too.
Well, Diggable Planet. Well, I'm talking more early 2000s. Like that underground hip hop scene is really starting to bubble. And
I'm going back to my bad. I'm going back to the comment of like when people are like, yeah, if you want underground, check these out. That's why I brought that one up. But I'm just thinking of like the ones that people were trying to get me into. And Jurassic 5 was definitely in that list.
Yeah. This album and Power Numbers are amazing albums, and like you said, if you at all, ask about or start getting into underground hip hop, you definitely hear those albums. Yeah.
And it isn't until now, of course, that I'm giving it a really deep and thorough listen, because when I first heard of them, I'm not going to say I wasn't interested. It just didn't really catch my attention. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then kind of move on and go back to whatever's hot at the time. That's what I was, as I said in previous podcasts, that's really more looking for that banger. And I wasn't hearing that in Jurassic 5 in the way that I was looking for. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And then I move on and do something else. But, like a little bit about Jurassic 5, they're basically it's actually 6 people. And I stress this because from what I learned about them, I feel like kind of could go to other people. Jurassic 5 is a group of 6 people, not 5 people.
Right.
And it consists of groups, the Unity Committee, which is an acronym for United Nations of Intelligence Teaching Youth. And that was comprised of Cut Chemist, Charlie Tuna, and Mark 7. And then you also have the Rebels of Rhythm, which is Akil, Zakir, and DJ Newmark. So they formed after, I'm not remembering the song, it's Rebel Committee? I don't remember what the song was, but they collaborated on that, which is on the Jurassic 5, their first album they put out. And then after that, it sounds like it was kind of history, and they started doing projects together. And from like just listening to a couple tracks of their previous groups, you can kind of get a feel of what elements they brought to Jurassic 5. Right. So when they are singing and harmonizing and mainly when they're singing, you get that from Rebels, the Rebels of Rhythm. When you get the going back and forth and the alternating and the collaborating when they're dropping their bars, that's more of the Unity Committee. Gotcha. And that's what I got out of that. And I didn't read that anywhere. That's just what I personally put together. But and again, the members include Zakir, Mark 7, Charlie Tuna, Akil. They're the ones that rap, and their respective DJs being DJ Newmark and Cut Chemist. So it's kind of, if you were to relate it to another group, it reminds you of NWA in the fact that you have some MCs and then 2 people DJing.
And doing production. Yeah.
So unlike, Gangstar, where you have one DJ.
One MC.
One MC.
Yeah. Besides NWA, I think Jurassic 5 is a pretty unique group for the time that they came out. There weren't a lot of other groups like them, especially with having 2 DJs, 2 in-house producers.
And that's why I'm relating it to NWA, because there aren't too many groups that have that. Especially, it's one thing to have like a group of 2 and then a group of 3, I feel like is max. But to have 4 people on a track at one time, you would think that would get super convoluted. And that's actually one of the notes that I put down for this album overall, was that with most groups, and I think of the episode that we did with Goody Mob. One of my critiques was that you have 3 people in here. They're not they're on the topic, but they're going in different directions. And to me, it wasn't cohesive. Jurassic 5 does a great job of building off of each other's thing or wrapping it back around to where everybody's verse makes sense for the track. So you almost want to look at the chorus to see, okay, what's the message of the song? And then you see if each one of their verses fits that topic, and it does every time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think they do an amazing job of being on the same page on every song. And then the way you mentioned it before, the way they harmonize a lot of the verses or the hook or the chorus, it definitely makes them sound more like one unit rather than four individuals spitting their verse about whatever, just going off, and then next song. It's very different than the Slaughterhouse. This is more similar to the Beastie Boys, where they would finish each other's verses or they would switch lines every time. Jurassic 5 definitely does that a lot, and they do it really well. And they do have a few songs where they spit longer verses, each of them. But for the most part, most of the songs, they'll spit 2 to 4 lines, and the next MC comes in and maybe finishes a line from before, and the next MC comes in, and it's kind of overlapped a little bit.
It's not till later in the album that you really have someone getting a longer verse. I mean, I want to say like 75% of this album is them really sharing the spotlight.
Right.
And, you don't really have, I mean, I think of D12 where it's not explicit, but it's very clear that this is Eminem's group. This is not individual people amongst one thing. And the best person in that group is Eminem. And you have your worst person in their group being Bizarre. Yeah. In this group, I want to say there's people that stand out, but it's not taking over more than another person. For me, Tuna stands out the most. It's mostly because of his voice, and it's also because no one else is putting rhymes together like him. But he's not necessarily better because of that. He's just different and stands out because of his style.
Yeah, and his voice. I think Charlie Tuna has one of the most distinct and recognizable voices in hip hop.
Oh yeah.
And he's done the most solo work out of any of the artists. I mean, besides Cut Chemist and DJ Newmark, who've done a lot of projects on their own. But in terms of the rappers, Charlie Tuna's put out a good amount of solo material. The only other rapper that I've heard their solo material from is, Zakir. He's put out a project, I think like a year ago or 2 years ago, that I actually really liked. It was I forget the name of it. I'll have to look it up, but it was an amazing project, and I was like shocked at how good it was. And it was super underground. Like, I don't think many people even know about it, but Charlie Tuna's, and he's done a lot of features. Like, he's definitely more out there compared to the other artists. The other artists you don't even really know about, outside of Jurassic 5.
I can see that, and I have to say, like, listening to this album, and what made me always think that there were only 5 members of the group is, if I'm not mistaken, to me, Zakir and Akil sound so similar that it's hard to differentiate and be like, oh wait, that's actually a 4th person rapping, because their styles are similar and they sound alike.
Right.
But yeah, those are my, thoughts on that, and my kind of, stuff for to start.
Let's get into it. Well, before we get into it, I want to thank all of our first time and last time listeners. If you're just tuning in to hear our thoughts on this album and won't be back again, we feel sorry for you. You should tune in again. No, I'm kidding. No, but thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all of the listeners out there. Definitely check us out on social media. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're on there. If you want to see videos of us, you can check that on YouTube. We post little, 5 to 10 minute clips from the episodes. And we also have the full episodes on there as well.
Twitter's an odd spot, man. I mean, just trying to get on there and post more. Like, it's an easy place to get stuck, but it's a good place to learn. But
Twitter is a crazy place. It's kind of like the wild, wild west. Anything goes on Twitter.
It's like people start trending for no reason, and then just kind of get your hopes up and whatever.
Yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Everyone on there is, a lot of people. The one thing I don't like about this is off topic, but the one thing I don't really like about Twitter is a lot of people will have hot takes, like in hip hop, just for the sake of causing controversy so that they get attention, not because they actually believe what they're saying. They just say shit to get attention, and yeah, it really annoys me.
Yeah, it's kind of, that reminds me of like that dude. I don't know if you saw it, but like he put up a top thing for artists and had Joe Budden in like the top 5. But it's definitely one of those.
Yeah, that was another podcast that did that. They created a list and put Joe Budden in like top 3.
Yeah, who the fuck did that?
No, but I wasn't mad at them. I mean, I think they were wrong, but hip hop, like everyone's list, it's subjective. You know, if Joe Budden's your favorite rapper, why wouldn't you put him in? Because there's a difference between your favorite top MCs and the greatest top MCs.
I was talking about you, Matt, but I mean,
I would have put Joe Budden in my top.
I think he was at least top 10 or something.
No, for me, he's top 25.
Would that change after doing this podcast?
No.
No?
I would still put him in my top 25.
Still be a top 25?
Yeah. Because he has probably top 5 all-time mixtape runs with the Mood Music mixtapes. And you can't discredit that. He's up there with the top in that category.
All right. I don't disagree. I was just, I'm checking in. But as we check back to this album, we're going to start off with how we get along.
How we get along. The intro.
And you know, it's short, but I feel like it's actually pretty important. And in this short thing, like they mention, you know, the song is obviously how we get along, and you're looking at a group of 4 members, 2 if you know, 6 if you're looking at the DJs, and when you have 4 people on a track, and if a track is 4 or 5 minutes, how do you dice that up? How are you guys all on the same page? How do you decide what you're going to do? And it's covered here, and I feel like this sets the groundwork for the rest of the album. Of like, we consider rhythm, eye contact, harmony.
They listen to one another.
Listening to each other. And it really, like, I feel like after listening to the album and then you come back to this, you're like, wow, they really are a cohesive unit. I wonder how they do these things. And then you cue the first track again, you're like, oh, okay. All these elements that they're talking about are all on display throughout the whole album.
Yeah.
And so it's actually an important track.
And it's, you know, I don't know how much we need to get into this, but they did break up in 2007, which for me, they're one of my favorite hip hop groups ever, and I was really sad about that because I love Jurassic 5, and they put out their last album and they broke up because of differences. They weren't getting along, so. You know, I don't know if they ever really went into detail about why that was, but it kind of sucks, like hearing this intro song about how they were getting along and they're listening to each other and their eye contact and, you know, they're on the same page, but then later in their careers they drift away from that.
I feel that. I guess I'm thinking more in the sense of how do you have all the gears, like if everyone is. Well, insects have 6 legs. So if we're looking at an ant and each one of them represent a leg and they have to move through something flawlessly, I'm looking more about how the machine works. Because of course, and it makes sense, like down the line, someone's going to want to do something that the other one isn't going to want to do. But going back to what you were saying earlier about the Beastie Boys and how, you know, they're trading off lines, they're finishing off each other's sentences. I think this track more answers that question for me of how the machine stays oiled and works when you have 6 individual parts.
Yeah, it kind of gives you context for how they're able to make the music that they make.
And that's the answer it gave me, as opposed to like differences. Like, that part sucks.
Yeah.
But that's what I got out of that. The influence. I love a lot of stuff about this song.
Yeah, this is a dope song to start the album. High energy. The beat's super hard, a little bit more up tempo. And I love the way this album starts off with Mark 7's verse when he says, "Then crush your confidence like plastic condiments, build you up to break you down like forgotten monuments." They're just spitting hard bars at you to start this album off, and I love when they harmonize the lyrics when they all come together to harmonize a verse. It gets you hyped up, and it really makes it really makes you want to see them live. You're like, I want to see them all together doing this. It gets me excited to listen to this.
I liked the influence because they're all sharing. Man, I don't know how to put this into words. They're all sharing their influence for why they're doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And they're also, while at the same time, questioning some of the other influences that other MCs are doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you have two people saying, like, this is why I do this, and that. And then you have the other, but you get a feeling that what they're saying is covering the basis for the whole group. And then you have two other people kind of questioning everyone else. And it's just all like one voice, even though they're all sharing a good number of bars throughout the song.
Right.
It's this uniform voice that speaks
right.
out. Like you don't feel like, oh man, well, I didn't hear Wyatt Keel what his influence was.
Right.
But I think you did.
Yeah, they do a really good job of making it a cohesive sound.
Yes.
Where they're all on the same page and they're all going in the same direction and they're on the same wavelength, which I think is important as a listener, because you don't want to be pulled in a bunch of different directions when you're listening to a song. You want to go in one direction and stick to that throughout the whole song. And I think Jurassic 5 mastered that.
Yeah, they're talking about their influences, and they're also collectively putting themselves on the map. They're grabbing the mic, they're shattering your confidence with their flows, they're telling you to watch who you talk to, and that was all expressed within the first 4 verses and across 4 different people. And I thought that was really cool, because like you're saying, you don't want to stray too far away, but they all kept on the same page, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned in the beginning, like from the chorus, you know exactly what they're talking about. And then they just fill in the gaps from there. And
yeah, but one of my favorite lines from Charlie Tuna is, no comp, we paint a darker picture in your sector. Perfect verbal architecture, sparking lectures, lyrics infectious, fuck your Lexus. If you ain't giving God your praise, then it's useless.
That didn't hurt your feelings when you said fuck your Lexus?
No, didn't. Because I felt like he was referencing Jay-Z.
Oh, because we talked about that in Jay-Z and Nas. Damn.
So he's kind of like, he's not talking shit to Jay-Z. He's talking shit to like the materialism that's going on in hip hop at the time. And he's saying, fuck your material goods. It's about God, and giving him praise and having, humility.
Well, Tuna would say Allah.
Allah, yes, because they are.
At least he is. I can't speak.
I think they all are.
Oh, okay.
Besides Newmark and Chemist, I think all the MCs are Muslim, which adds a different dynamic and influence to their lyrics, and they definitely push that through in the lyrics. But yeah, I just think it's dope how Charlie Tuna, like they're very self-aware of what their direction is as a group and what they represent. Even though they're signed to a major, and they're still, I think they themselves consider them outside of the mainstream of hip hop.
You get a lot of that not only in this track, because they talk about, they're talking about how real they are and how they don't need rehearsals to rock a show. They also don't need to be flashy either. And again, like you hear that throughout in a couple songs here and there throughout the album. So they're almost kind of checking and questioning the authenticity of other people in the game. And I don't know. I like some of the things that they said. They're questioning the love that you're putting into the game. They suggest getting the same nose candy to revitalize that juice you have. Yeah. So, that remind me about that line, because while they're questioning what you need in order to feel good about what you're doing, it's like, go hit that coat. Go do what you need to do your thing, but we're straight here and we're good. Like we don't need anything artificial to keep us jamming. So
yeah, dope song, and then the next goes into another banger.
Oh wait, hold on. Before we go on to the next one, I wanted to add. What did you think of the beat to that song?
I loved it. I thought it was like it had high energy and it hit hard. The drums hit really hard.
I didn't like it at first.
You didn't like the beat?
When I was first listening to it, I was like, man, whatever. But then I just liked how it like would change. I like how the beats, there's a lot of beats in this album. They start off like meh, and then they like evolve throughout, and then they come back. And it's just because, you're so used to hearing one song and it just repeats over and over and over.
Yeah.
They play with these a little bit, and I like that.
Yeah, and I think we'll get more into the production later. But that's what you're pointing out says a lot about the style of DJ Newmark and Cut Chemist. And if you listen to any of their solo albums or other projects that they've done, you'll definitely get a sense of the type of producers that they are and how they like to change up the beat and add a lot of different samples and elements to them to not make them just one, simple beat that repeats itself over and over. They add a lot of different nuances.
Yeah, and you hear that throughout. Agreed. Great Expectations.
Yeah, banger. For me, it's a banger. For me, this is a classic. This just brings me back so many memories of being in middle school, high school. For me, this is just a classic song.
I mean, it makes me like want to put the term banger on a tier, like one being like the most bangiest. And then,
no, it's not the most bangingest, but it's definitely a banger to me.
But that's why I was adding that in, because for the time that it came out, I think it fits that mold. But it's compared to like and this is just me, like comparing it to newer music, I'm like,
I love the horns, like the sample in it. It's such a dope horn sample that you don't hear a lot in hip hop.
I bet this would be amazing live.
Yeah, I was definitely gonna bring that up. I saw them live for the reunion in 2014 or 15. They did a bunch of shows.
You were there for that?
They got back together. And I had to, because I never got to see them live when they were together. And I had always heard that they're one of the best hip hop acts to see live. I heard that they were up there with the Roots as some of the best live shows you could see in hip hop.
Roots would be
and I was always, disappointed that I didn't get to see them live. So when they did their reunion shows, I had to go, and I actually went with my friend. We drove down from here, from Northern California. We went and saw them at in Santa Barbara at the I think it was the Greek Theater in Santa Barbara. It was an amazing outdoor venue, and it really was one of the best shows I've ever seen. They bring so much energy, and when they harmonize it's just incredible. And then Newmark and Cut Chemist doing their thing when they're DJing, and they do a bunch of crazy shit. It's an incredible show. If you're listening and you ever get the chance to see Jurassic 5 live, you will not be disappointed. You don't even have to like their music, but just seeing it live it's an incredible show.
That's the best part about live music, is that someone's stuff will sound amazing, and then you buy it and you're like, the fuck did I just buy?
I don't think that's the case with Jurassic 5, in my opinion, but they sound incredible, on the record, and then live it's even better. But one of my favorite lines ever in hip hop, is on this song from Charlie Tuna, when he says, "Yo, go get your ticket, your seats, snacks, and beverages, while we get wicked all in your brain cracks and crevices, serving bulletins to your critical Puritans who be shouting in my vicinity, doubting my capability." I just love those lines. I think it's incredible, and the way he spits it is nuts. Like his flow and everything. Man, those lines always stuck out in my head. I don't know why, but it always stuck to me.
Yo, let's start it from the top. I mean, Akil, I think, has the first verse.
Yes, Akil killed it.
And I love how descriptive he gets in this stuff. In Great Expectations, they're really describing a bunch of stuff that it gives you. I feel like the song for me at least, can be interpreted in different ways. They're talking about the great expectations that they're looking forward to. with the game, expectations on their end that they want to put into their music, and then it's just defined in different ways. Yeah. But with his verse, you get the feel that he really put the work in to get where he is. Like there were no corners that were cut. There were no cheat codes. He really like put in the work. I like the line, "My dream/career appeared ever so clear. Now I'm able to touch, smell, feel, speak, and hear." And he's bringing in the senses at this point. Like he was revitalized and awoke. Like he became woke with hip hop, and it put him on a new level to achieve this dream.
Yeah.
But like, I put down music brought him to life. And then Tuna talks about delivering music to you. Mark says that they're here to preserve and not bring you bullshit. And, this is again touching on how they're separating themselves from mainstream media or mainstream music, and that, we're real. We're not going to bring you BS.
Right.
We're different than that.
Right.
And like you brought up, like, even though we're signed to a major label, that's not necessarily mean that we're going to go in on that stuff.
Right.
But
yeah, incredible song. I think they all spit incredible verses on this song. I love the beat. It is an amazing song live.
My last note, Zakir has a great verse in the end that touches on a lot of things and expectations from him, and you as the listener from delivering music on time to not expect what emotion he may come in with, to expect him not to hold back and to bite his tongue. And lastly, no explanation for his creation. It comes off as very unapologetic. Yeah. Of like, this is what we are. This is what I'm doing. Right. So I just thought that was a deep track. Like there's nothing, you can pull some lines out of the songs, but I feel like there's nothing explicit that I think of Dr. Dre talking about in Compton, like you can pull verses out. Oh no, this is Jay-Z, sorry. In an interview talking about you could pull a verse out from Biggie and put it on the wall and call it art. And like, I don't want to say in this song that there's something like that, but it's more of like the story that they're drafting through their lyrics. You'd have to put the whole chord, like the whole verse on that to get the idea.
Yeah.
But that's what I like that. I like the track. Not so much, no, the beat was all right, but I like the message.
Right.
In it.
So next we go into the quality intro, which it's more of an interlude before you get into the song Quality Control.
You hear a lot of expectation and quality repeated over and over. And that kind of goes back to the first track of, building that foundation to what to expect out of this group. And we just heard the track on expectations. You can tell that they are taking what they do serious, so that's the quality behind it and delivering a great project. And so that leads into the title track for the album, Quality Control.
Yep.
And
another classic song.
I'm gonna have to remember how it sounds. And
this one's produced by Cut Chemist.
The first couple were all, no, 3 was Cut and Mark.
Yeah.
And then 2 and 1 were both
Newmark.
Newmark.
Quality Control captivates body patrol. I love that they harmonize the chorus. It sounds great. They do a lot of harmonizing on this song. And it's cool. It adds energy to it. I like that. It brings you more. It's more of an experience when they're all harmonizing the songs together. It makes it more of an impact rather than just one of them saying the chorus.
A minor critique that I have in their harmonizing is that they always have to tell you, like, we're Jurassic 5, this is what we're here to do. And like, it goes to, to their first album, it goes across Feedback, and it goes to
Power and Numbers.
So that's like the only thing. Is like, I get it, you're Jurassic 5.
It's a very hip hop thing to do.
It is, but like not on what feels like a good majority of your tracks. I feel like I was meaning to count it and I didn't, but I want to say they do it on at least 5 tracks in this album.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know you're Jurassic 5. But that's a very, very minor critique. Yeah.
No, it's a great song. I think they're like you like to say, they're hip hopping. So yeah, I thought they did a great job bringing an energy to this song, to Quality Control, and it definitely fits in with the title of the album and the theme of the album of we're bringing quality hip hop. We're all on the same page. We're in control of the direction we want to take our music and what we're bringing to the table. And one of my favorite lines from the song is by Mark 7. He says, "We keep it beaming like a beacon. If it's clearance that you're seeking, whether black or Puerto Rican, people back us when we're speaking. We got this kind of rhyme that gets you ready for the weekend."
That hits.
Yeah, so I love these lyrics. Just showing that, hey, we're bringing that real shit, and you can play it, you know, when you want to get hyped up or you want to party or just lay back and chill. You know, no matter who you are, like, we're making dope music for you.
My favorite line was by Tuna. He said, "You baby MCs drink Pedialyte, while underground doesn't like you, the media might." And I was like, oh man, that hurt my feelings. I'm not drinking Pedialyte. So I like that one.
Just comes hard with it. So after this, we go into another interlude. Contact, which is by Cut Chemist. And he just putting a bunch of samples together and talking about, you know, Jurassic 5 using these different samples and what they're about.
What did you get from the meaning contact? If you,
for me, it's Jurassic 5 getting in contact with the audience and what they're about. You know, they're putting this music out there for you to get in contact with.
Okay. I mean, I thought, like, I was just trying to think of, because they talk about a fossil and they talk about space and making contact with Earth. And
yeah,
I was kind of thinking that, you know, some metaphor of their music is kind of out of this world and it's like rooted in old stuff, but modern, and it's being delivered, you know, obviously being delivered to us.
That's kind of where the name comes from. I think I read that it was one of their parents said they sounded like a group from the 70s or 80s that was called like
started with an F.
Yeah, it's the Fantastic Five or something, something along those lines.
But more like the Jurassic 5.
But more like Jurassic 5, so they kind of just ran with it because they sounded old school, like Jurassic.
And I think that's what's up is like I think that's it, is that like we have an old school approach with a modern sound, but is different because it's not what the mainstream stuff is. So it's kind of out of, I don't mean to use, there's a better term than out of this world. But like, and it's being delivered to you. So it's kind of what I got from that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, it's a very short interlude, but it makes you think about what they're meaning to say. That made sense.
And so that leads into the next song, LAUSD.
Which is pronounced
Lost.
Yeah.
And which stands for the Los Angeles Unified School District.
Correct.
And this is the point in the album where it starts to turn away from just hip hop and dope songs to now there's going to be a little bit more messages and deeper meaning behind the songs, and they're having a purpose, a deeper purpose for some of these lyrics. There's a little more depth coming for the rest of the album. And it starts off with Lost, and really dope song. I like the messages behind it of, you know, don't get caught up in the glamour and the glitz of being in entertainment and being in hip hop, especially in this time. Like we mentioned it so many times of where hip hop was in the early 2000s, late 90s. It was very different from the 80s and early 90s hip hop. And they also talk about being in LA for this, of people get caught up in the glamour of LA and seeking seeking validation through being famous or being put on and being an actress or a famous rapper or whatever.
On a side note, Charlie Tuna is from Chicago, and I believe it's Mark 7 that's from New Jersey. I may have mixed that up, though, with...
I think you're right. But they grew up in L.A.
But they grew up... Yeah, but they're like the only ones that are from outside of L.A. But they've, as Matt said, are from L.A.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing to grow up in L.A. and then also be around the Hollywood lifestyle, especially for them when they are in entertainment, making their rap artists, and they're almost speaking to themselves of like, don't get caught up in whatever the Hollywood thing is with being entertainers. Like stick true to yourself and be genuine about what you're doing in Hollywood. One of the lyrics or the lines that I really love is the city of angels' wings represent people's hopes and dreams, and the evil that men do that live life close to kings and boast supreme fancy cars, coats, and cream. Material things provoke more folks to scheme. Whether you paid your cost, Cali Green made you cough. The smoke covers the city like a tablecloth. That's some deep lines about living in LA and trying to make it. And, there's a lot of materialism and, getting caught up with having the nicest car, the nice house. But a lot of people are going to take advantage of you in your quest to get all of those things. They don't have a moral high ground. They don't have your interests in mind. They're trying to get put on themselves. And I feel like a lot of the message in this song is warning people about that, about the dangers of getting caught up in that lifestyle.
He also, I forget which one talked about it, but talking about like the Hollywood Walk of Fame and how, obviously that's the stars and their names and everything, but they're also synonymous with scars of people that tried to come out here and didn't make it. Because, man, what is it? Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis, where Zach Galifianakis' character is coming to LA to pursue acting. Like in media, you see LA associated with like City of Dreams, is it? Where like you come in here, you start acting, do whatever you want, and you can become famous and rich and stuff like that. It's really glamorized like that.
Yeah, and the problem is you hear stories of that, of famous actors that get put on, they move to LA to pursue acting, and then they're there for 10 years, and all of a sudden they get put on and they're world famous. But you don't hear about the tens of thousands of other people that try to do the same thing and they didn't get put on.
Oh yeah, it's very just trying to like, for you out there wanting to put out a video that goes viral, that's super hard. You may end up breaking your leg 3 or 4 times before it catches on, and it's like, oh, this is actually really funny. Like, it's a hard thing to do, and that's what the main thing that they're pointing out. One of my favorite parts is how they're kind of associating it with women, men, just relationships with women, and how I guess it doesn't even have to be women. Just like you're putting it a lot into a relationship to make it work, and then it doesn't end up working out in the end. Right. But Mark 7 has an interesting verse where he mixes she would and Hollywood. So like if you're reading the lyrics, it says she would, but as you're listening to the track in the background, it says Hollywood. So it's like blurring them together. And he's saying things like, it will turn you out, lead you astray, blur vision if you aren't ready, and things like that. And I just feel like that's a really cool way of mixing Hollywood and everything that Matt was just talking about with relationships and how they can lead you astray. And in his then in his last line, he doesn't mix them, and it says that this chick is full of tricks, so approach them with fear. So to kind of sum up what you were saying, like this is everything that this is, and it'll look nice and it's tempting and it's great, but like really proceed with caution because it may not work out in your favor.
Yeah, it's interesting that they felt the need to warn people about that. You know, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know the purpose of why they did this, but for some reason, I get the feeling that they're talking more to themselves than anything. They're almost like reminding themselves, hey, stay the course. Don't get caught up in the glamour of being in LA and up-and-coming rappers. You know, we're signed to a major label, but we have to stay true to who we are.
There's I can't remember the song off the top of my head, but there's a song by Ludacris where he's basically giving you game about the industry. He also talks about Chingy and his fallout and everything. But one of the first things he encourages people to do is to buy the rights to their own name. But basically what he's getting at is protecting yourself and being aware of the industry because it's very cutthroat. And in one of the albums that we went over, I don't remember if it was KRS-One or if it was someone else, but they're talking about like how bad the industry can be. And so to kind of touch on your point, it's like, well, I don't plan on going famous anytime soon. I don't know why you're really telling me that. But at the same time, it's also kind of cool to hear because in a lot of mainstream music, it's like you don't really think about their journey to where they got to. It's just like, oh, they're here and I'm listening to their music. This is great. But this is kind of like a vulnerability of like, hey, if you do, we're speaking to ourselves because we want to remember where we've been from. But yeah, in case you are, for anyone out there, even if the population is small, know that this is not the best place. It's not easy and it takes a lot of work. So I respect
it gives you a little bit of insight into their journey.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah.
And they end it with, in Zakir's verse, he says, it's the place where stars are born, and we are the only ones that can't be worn. So it's like, despite all this shit, like we're going to tough it out, and we're going to keep fighting, and we did it. So it's not too dark, and maybe it comes off as some people as motivational, and that they can do it too.
Right.
But just have to maintain a tough skin.
Yep. And then going into the next song, World of Entertainment.
Which is kind of a segue from that track.
Yeah, it's definitely along the same lines of the previous track. And they're talking about entertainers and, you know, how to remain who they are and keep rocking crowds and you know, how they move up in popularity, but they still are going to stick true to who they are. And it's a cool song. It's not my favorite beat on the album.
Oh, I'm glad. Funny you say that. It's my least favorite beat on the whole album. But you know, despite it being my least favorite, when I was listening to it again today, I was like, you know, the last song was just talking about the come up, and then this one, Woe Is Me, World of Entertainment. This beat kind of sounds like a carnival. Something you'd hear in a carnival. And it made me just think about like, man, the way, and from what they're talking about and tying this beat into it, like the whole thing is just a circus. And a circus is like this smorgasbord of all these entertainment things that may or may not be appealing to you. And I was like, man, that's actually cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. It fits the theme of the song, for sure, the production. Just not my favorite beat. You know, and I've heard other rappers use like like you're saying, a circus type beat, and I just can't get into it. It's not that it's cheesy, but it's a little kitschy or cliche or whatever. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me.
I didn't like it at all. But I feel like for me defining that as a carnival beat, which is for them associating just the entertainment biz and everything, it kind of fits all around.
Right.
Don't like
this.
this.
The entertainment biz is a circus.
It's a circus that fucking sucks. This beat sucks. I don't think they're just like, hey, let's pick a shitty beat and rap to it about this. I doubt it was that laid out.
Well, what's crazy is this was a single. And I was like, what? Why would they put this out as a single? That's kind of crazy. Interscope fucked up.
Yeah, and you know, another thing that I picked out of this track was there's some more definitions that they're beginning to lay down. They say, this track, like, no one really has their own verse. It's really back and forth.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of harmonizing.
It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of harmonizing, a lot of collaboration. But they say you see a rapper as a kid that beats. Typo. The beats acts big. Sorry about that. A rhymer is a nigga that can handle his biz. A rapper is a kid that's trying to be the shit. An entertainer ain't trying because he already is. And so they're again here separating themselves from rappers. We are entertainers. We are not rappers. Right. And I think it's later on in another track where it's like they're just ripping into fake people. Oh, like in a couple tracks ago, where it was like these people are just coming out here just to do their thing. Like they need their as they said, nose candy or the juice to kind of perform.
Right.
But we are all about this. We don't need to rehearse to perform. We're entertainers. We got this, and we love what we do.
Right.
So
it's very much about the music for them. Mm-hmm. It's not about the result of making music, which could be fame, money, recognition, validation. For them, they're almost just pointing out that stuff doesn't matter to us. For us, it's about the music and performing the music.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of take it back a little bit too, if I'm gonna roll with them on that definition, when you think of rapping, it's just like a very explicit skill. Rapping is the art of forming words together and harmonizing with it and stuff. And this is me internalizing what they're saying. But an entertainer is like, well, I have that skill, but you have to be able to use it to where people can vibe with you and get on board with you. So an entertainer, like if you're going out and you're just a robot, just telling off all these jokes, but no one's feeling you, like you've lost your audience. You're just out there using your skill, but you're not using your skill skillfully, which is what an entertainer does. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, okay, like you guys are laying that definition down. Like I like that. I respect that.
Right. Yeah, it's super dope.
Yeah. Monkey bars.
Dope beat. I like all the different samples in this. It's a lot of different sounds and a lot of different elements. It can get a little crazy sometimes, but I still think it's a really dope beat. And they're all spitting on this. They all go in. And they're having a little bit more fun on this track. Mm-hmm. And this track sounds like they made it with performing on a live show. Because if you heard this live, you'd be like, with all the different sounds and the production and what's going on, and especially if Newmark and Cut Chemist are inserting those sounds live with their samples, then it's like, whoa, like this is a crazy experience. Which they cool. do that.
Yeah, that'd be dope to hear live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. I didn't pull much from that track though.
It's there's not a lot to it. It's, they're
just having fun. They're having fun with it. And then the same thing with Jurassic finish first. Mm-hmm. I didn't pull too much out of that either. What I thought was interesting though is that it's just Tuna and Mark 7 rapping.
Yeah.
And so that was cool because you get to hear more of Charlie Tuna going at it.
Yeah.
And like I said from the jump, for me, he really stands out in the group and is someone that I would want to hear more of. Mm-hmm.
I love this song. This song has always stood out to me. I like the beat. It's very simple. I like the piano sample. And I've always appreciated the lyrics in this. And it's a little bit, not less energy, but it's more of a toned down energy. It kind of brings you down a little bit. Not in a bad way, but it's just a little bit calmer. And the way Charlie Tuna and Mark 7 spit, it's not at you and they're not being aggressive. Mm-hmm. They're kind of just speaking on a few things that they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. Some of the lines that I really like from Mark 7 is, some are lacking intellect in their quest for a check. Is it love or respect? Does the subject get you vexed? Only four bars to wreck. The situation is complex. He's pointing out they're not really thinking about what they're doing or their purpose. They're just out to get a check. Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of artists in anything, in acting, music, TV, writing, whatever, where they're just performing that to get the check. They're not doing it for the passion of performing. There's plenty of rappers that, if they didn't have a career in rapping, they would happily be doing something else to make money. Whereas there's some other rappers or artists where even if rapping didn't give them a career or they made a living from it, they would still be doing it, regardless if they made money from it, because it's the passion of doing it just to make music.
It kind of goes, I feel like it touches on, again, the 2 tracks ago, with World of Entertainment, where, they're, again, telling you, explaining like what it means to be an entertainer versus just a rapper, but adding on to it by like, as Matt's saying, you guys just, there's no passion. Even if you want to call yourself an entertainer, there's no like authenticity. It's not genuine. You're just doing it for the check. And so, just want to throw that in.
And you're only gonna get so far doing that, and you're not gonna get what you want out of something without having a deep purpose for it. Great song. I've always loved that one.
I like the next track a lot. Contribution is, for one, like it's one of 2 beats not produced by DJ Newmark or by Cut Chemist. This is by Shafiq Hussein.
He's a dope producer, and he still produces. Blue actually did a whole album with him.
I meant to look at other projects that he's done, and I got busy washing my car. But the chorus breaks down by asking, what's one's contribution to life? And that's a really deep question if you're going to sit down and ask anyone. Are you complaining, or are you making changes? Are you the problem, or are you the solution? Then they kind of, so after defining that, then there's like this narration of like, hey, we're going to hear 3 stories that really touches on this topic.
Right.
And the 3 stories, I can't tell if they're related or if they're separate, but they are related.
They're very similar.
They're very similar, and I couldn't tell if it was like, it almost didn't matter. And this all doesn't make any sense, but like they're all so related that it doesn't matter if they're the same people or it's not, because it's a very similar situation.
Yeah. And the situation is, it's pretty much based around a man and a woman. And the woman is contributing. She's getting her education. She's providing.
She's the primary breadwinner.
She's the breadwinner. And the man is... drinking, he's sinning, he's spending money on drugs and women, and not contributing to the relationship or to society or to himself.
Right. Zakir's he opens up and he's painting, as Matt's saying, he's basically painting a picture of this dysfunctional family, where dad's into drugs and drinking, they have kids, but mom's like not only taking care of the kids, but also maintaining the household and paying the bills while dad's fucking off.
Right. Which is a very common thing, and it happens all way too often. So they're pointing this stuff out and then asking the question of what's your contribution to life? Like, here are some examples of these, partners, a man and a woman. One is contributing, one is not. How does that look like? What does that look like? And how does that affect if they have children or the people around them? And it's an interesting song. It's an interesting concept.
So the third verse, I legit put down Tuna comes in for the third verse and drops some knowledge. Yeah. So in the third verse, like, you can tell the mom is just looking at the picture as a whole and is just like, no, this ain't right. So she confronts the dad about his spending habits when they should be, first and foremost, for their kids. You get some domestic dispute where he hits her, but then she's like, you need to get the hell out of the house now.
Yeah.
And the product of this is that it creates this loop, and it's a loop that I see in my own in my family personally. And Matt, I'm not sure. Have you heard of the term latchkey kid?
Yes.
Okay. So for those that don't know what latchkey kid is, it's basically, it can be like a single parent household where mom is let's say mom is supporting her kids, but she's working nonstop. So latchkey comes from the term of like literally leaving a key to the house underneath the doormat or so.
Yeah.
And so, but it basically is this culture, these kids that are independent and aren't reliant, like there's just not much of a connection with their parents because they have to raise themselves. Maybe older brother has to help a younger sister through her homework because mom's not around to help out because she's trying to maintain the household. So it makes these kids grow up way faster than they need to be.
Yeah.
And so they bring up latchkey kids, and then it also talks about how in one way it's teaching the daughters to reject men, and then also it's teaching sons to attract women that don't respect men.
Right.
So it ends with this message that if anything, the best thing you can spend on kids is time. And so it just had this really like deep message through this whole storytelling.
And I along with you, I can relate a lot to this song where I was raised in a single parent household and my mom had to work. So she would work till 6 or 7 every night. So me, my brother, and my sister, we'd either be in daycare at her school until my mom could pick us up or take us home, or we would go home, like a friend's parent would drop us off at home or something, and be on our own. And my older brother would have to watch over us. So yeah, I can definitely relate to this of, if your single parent can only do so much. They don't get be around so much to give you that time to really that a kid needs, which is difficult. And you can't blame the single parent for not being there because they have to provide. They have to work and do whatever.
Yeah, there's sacrifices to be made. I mean, I deal with this with the families that I work with. I mean, for new listeners, whatever, I work with special needs kids as a behavior consultant. And, you see a lot of families, especially families of color, where there's just this thing, and this is just my own thoughts on it, but it's worse for families with special needs kids because I deal with a lot of single parents, mostly moms. It's almost like, and this is just, again, my thought, that the dad is just like, oh shit, my kid's going to be stupid. Like, he's not going to play football or do any of this stuff. Like, I'm out. And so it leaves this mom just to tend with kids. And it's one thing if kids are neurotypical and don't have any diagnoses, but when you have a diagnosis, and especially if you have multiple kids, like that's rough. And that makes the situation even harder to deal with.
Yeah.
And so, this song spoke to me because it's like, I work with these families where, in this story, they're telling a story where a dad's an alcoholic and got booted. But, a lot of families, dad's just out of the picture regardless, never was even there. So,
the line that Charlie Tuna spits about the most that you can spend on any child is time. You could spend money on a kid all you want. You can buy them gifts and presents and take them on vacations, but what really matters is the time that you spend with them.
And in my work, the kids that are doing the best are the ones where the families are able to spend more time and buy into the program. But, even still, like, there's times where they can't. There's times where they're overwhelmed and they feel like they don't have time. You almost get this feel of like, hey, come in, fix my kid, and then I'll come in when I can. But you don't blame them. There's parts where you're just like, well, we have to do this together. I can't do it for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've been dealing with this on their own for 10, 12, 20 years or so on their own.
Right.
And they just need help. They need a respite. They need a break. So, I felt this song. It hit on a lot of different levels.
It's a dope song. There's a lot of deep meanings to it. A lot of depth.
A lot of
for sure.
A lot of it. But when we go to track 12, we go in a different direction. And not only do we go in a this is my favorite track on the whole album, is 12.
12.
Which is 12. So, and this is another same producer as the last track, and they're just out here having fun and hip hopping with it.
Yeah,
that's kind of mostly what I pulled from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a dope beat, dope rhymes. It's just dope hip hop. Mm-hmm. And they all kill it. They all have spit dope verses. They're talking their shit. Mm-hmm. Letting everyone know what they're about.
Yeah, if I'm blasting a song from this album, it's this one. I'm bumping this in my car. I'm bumping it at home if I'm doing something. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna add it to a playlist during a party. This song is what's up. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that was kind of that for that one. Number 13 with The Game. We go back to DJ Newmark.
Yep.
This was just a cool track. It was a fun track, and that they related to basketball.
Yeah, they all related basketball to their rhymes in different ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was super cool. It's dope.
Before, when it's just like they're going at different MCs, they're bringing it to the game of basketball. And one of the lines, I didn't write the line down per se, but it was like no fouls, just checks. And it's like, yeah, they don't have to come in and bombard things. They're just going in and doing what they're doing. They're letting you know what's up. So I thought that was cool. I really like that. The whole metaphor of the song is great.
Yeah, super dope track.
And Improvise, as we're getting towards the end.
Mm-hmm. And this one kind of had a theme to it, where they're spitting 2 lines really quickly, or 4 lines, each of them really quickly, and I think they're almost freestyling. Mm-hmm. They come in one after another and just freestyle a couple lines, and next one comes in. It almost gives you the feel of a cypher. They're all standing around, jumping in and spitting dope lines, and the next one comes in. So yeah, it's a really fun song.
It made me think of like a cousin to Monkey Bars.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of just going in and having fun at it. But what's cool is that they're taking different tracks, and even though that they're having fun with it, it's like a themed, as you were saying, it's a different theme to it. So this one is just like, we'll make something up. Yeah. Just come up with something. Obviously the definition of improvise. So Monkey Bars, they related it to, they talked about like being on the playground, having at it. Mm-hmm. But it's just kind of a different way of 4 people going in on a track and having fun.
Right.
So, man, number 15, I forgot to even write down what the track was called, which is called Swing Set.
Swing Set, yeah.
Nothing here.
Yeah, it's just it's Newmark and Cut Chemist showing their thing, their skill set of bringing in a bunch of different sounds and samples and mixing them in a fun, creative way.
It's a double entendre because, like you said, they're both having at it, but then it's a swing set, which is associated with the 50s and a lot of the sounds
swing music.
So swing music.
And it's going back and forth, and it has a swing vibe to it, but they're bringing so many other different sounds into it. So yeah, it's a dope way to end the album. Just kind of brings the energy. It ends on kind of a high note with just the beat, like a fun way to end it, where you're just listening to a high energy track with no rapping or anything, but it's still a fun listening experience.
It was cool. And it's cool to see a track where the DJs, it's like, hey, we're going to get this one.
Yeah.
And
let them showcase.
Yeah, let them do exactly. Let them showcase. Let them have fun with it.
And I would like to talk about the production and the DJs of Cut Chemist and DJ Newmark. Is when you see them live, it's a whole different experience, and they do some really crazy things when they perform live, and the way they mix and cut and bring in different sounds with their machines, and it's just incredible to see what they can do. And they're super creative, and I love that Jurassic 5, fitting with their name, they bring a lot of the old school ideas with them. Back in the 80s, it was more about the DJ in hip hop. The DJ was extremely important. Mm-hmm. You couldn't have a hip hop song or group without the DJ being the focal point. And Jurassic 5 is definitely bringing that back with their music. Is the DJs are definitely part of what they're doing. It's not just, they made a beat and we're going to rap on it. They're very much part of the group, and they're active in every song and being a part of it. which is great. And they're both incredible producers and DJs. They don't just make beats. Like they're actual DJs who can scratch and sample and do all this crazy stuff.
They do.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to see either of them live, they do the solo stuff. Definitely see them live. Mm-hmm. It's pretty incredible.
That'd be cool. I'm definitely going to have to create like a hip hop bucket list of some sorts and throw that on there for people to see.
I mean, it might be a while so you can see people live.
Right.
But...
Yeah, man. COVID sucks ass.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I really miss live music. I love going to see shows. Mm-hmm.
But even if genres that like you don't really fuck with, like I'm not too big onto like folk or rock or anything like that, but those are still like I still have a good time at those shows. Right. Like I love live music. I love music.
Yeah, it's a good experience. So yeah, that's the album Quality Control.
That is Quality Control.
And you've heard this album before.
Yeah. I have all three. I had all three of their albums. It's just I didn't give them a whole lot of listens though. It was just kind of like a year.
Well, they have 4. Do you have the first one?
No, I don't have the first one. I meant to say that I have 3. I have Feedback, Quality Control, and Power.
The first one's dope too. You should check it out.
I listened to it a little bit today, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
It's definitely old, but it's cool.
Yeah, I think this is a great album. I think Power and Numbers is my favorite Jurassic 5 album out of all of them. Mm-hmm. But Quality Control is definitely up there. It's one of my. It's definitely a great hip hop album. If you never heard Jurassic 5 or if you've heard a couple songs from them, you should definitely check this out and give it a listen. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool album to listen to, and it's an easy listen. It's pretty short. It doesn't take a lot.
I don't even think it's an hour. Yeah. It's 15 songs, but I don't think it's an hour.
Yeah. No, it's a great album, and it's definitely a fun listening experience. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get into. It's not, you don't have to like sit and try to figure out what they're talking about or.
No, I mean, it's all, what they all talk about is pretty straightforward. I think it did take me a lot of time in dissecting each song, but it's only because you have 4 people and, it's a little different. Right. But that's the only reason.
Yeah. So where and when are you bumping this album?
I think it's going to be low key. I like to play music when I'm cooking dinner. Yeah. And so this would be something I'd put on while I'm doing that.
It's like more of a passive listen.
Yeah. Like if I'm cooking, if I'm barbecuing, if I got a small like a handful of people over or something like that, obviously not on COVID. That's probably what I'm throwing it on.
This for me is, it's definitely an album I would just put on and rock the whole album while I'm driving.
I could do it driving
like that.
I was I put it on. We got some new dressers and we had to put those together. So I put up one of my my AirPods in and was listening to that. And it's like, oh, it's a nice listen. But also, if you throw this into Spotify, the music when you finish the album, the music that follows it is really good too. I got a mix of.
Like when Spotify automatically just starts playing similar stuff.
Yeah, like I got some Black Star, I got some Q-Tip.
Yeah, it's just like that classic hip hop stuff.
So it brings up a lot of like legit hip hop songs that follow it. So
yeah, and I do feel like Jurassic 5 is underappreciated a lot.
I could see that. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Like there's a few songs that you can't really. I'm gonna just skip it. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I would say that I understand why that is because none of the rappers' solo career really took off. Mm-hmm. I feel as if they all, like Wu-Tang, if they all put out great projects on their own, they would have garnered more notoriety. Charlie Tuna has, and Charlie Tuna's had a pretty good solo career, but the rest of them are quiet, so you don't really think about them too much. Mm-hmm. But I feel if they're more similar to Wu-Tang, where all the members put out dope albums, it would build up Jurassic 5 even more.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, But I don't know. I mean, overall, I thought it was a good listen. It does make me want to listen to their other albums. Like sometimes you hear one and you're like, fuck, I don't want to hear the rest of their stuff. Like I feel like if you were to hear, what's Slaughterhouse's last album?
Oh, Welcome to Our House.
Welcome to Our House. I feel like you wouldn't be too inclined to listen to other stuff.
Like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah, you'd be like, I think for that one, you're like, I'll give you guys one more chance. And then you do, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is great.
Well, they only had one other studio album. They have a couple mixtapes that are really good.
They have plenty of, I don't differentiate between too much depending between mixtapes and albums.
Now it makes a difference because if it's not on streaming, it's probably not going to get heard. And their mixtapes aren't on streaming platforms. So
no, that's a good point. But
you got to go to DatPiff and download them.
That makes sense. I feel that. I guess okay. My shoes are coming as a fan. I'm not looking at where it's being listed from, because I was up until this podcast. I was like, no, I'm buying CDs. I'm not getting Spotify. Right. So it was the same thing to me either way. But I hear what you're saying. But yeah, like I think that I think that this album is enough to make me want to, if I were a first time listener, I would want to listen to more of their stuff. So definitely check them out and give them a listen. It's interesting. I was looking at their website, and so they each have like a store that you can go to from that, but you can, purchase some of their, written lyrics on something. You can purchase like a 15-minute discussion with them. You can have one of them go to a movie with you, I guess. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just like a feature on an album with you. They offer different prices and stuff like that.
Wow.
So
nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I wish they would put out more music. I think technically they're not broken up right now. They did put out a song like a year or two ago. So they're definitely active. I just don't know how active they are, if they're planning on putting out another album. But I would love to hear it if they do.
I liked it.
Yeah, dope album. Definitely check it out. It's on all the streaming platforms.
Hey, just like our podcast.
Just like our podcast on Spotify.
You should
on
listen
Apple.
to that too.
I mean, they are listening to it if they're listening to it right now.
If they made it this far.
But yeah, thank you for tuning in this week on the Wrapped Up Podcast, where we take a deeper look into hip hop albums, old and new. And just a reminder that older albums like this one are chosen at random. So you never know, your favorite album may come up. You just got to stay tuned.
Fingers crossed. But hit us up. Maybe we'll be like, hey, I want you to do Foo Schnickens, and we're like, okay, I might do it.
We'll put it on the list.
I might add that.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, see you guys next week. Have a good rest of the day.
Peace.